Welcome to this special episode of Movie Geeks United, where we pay tribute to the film contributions of David Bowie. Everyone knows David Bowie as a rock god, which he was, without question. But he also had one of the most fascinating film careers.
Right.
I mean, a really striking filmography. And so I wanted to gather Dean and Jerry up and discuss a little bit about his output on the cinematic front. When you think David Bowie and the films that he made, what's the first film that comes to mind for you, Dean?
Easily Man Who Fell to Earth, even though it's been literally maybe 2 decades since I've seen it. It's I know it's on Criterion, but I think it's out of print at the moment, and copies of it are going online for upwards of $500, I hear. But Man Who Fell to Earth, Nicholas Roeg's movie is the film I think of. I think it's the one film that is strangely closest to his persona, I suppose, or is at least his popular persona, as a sort of otherworldly being on Earth, which is I think pretty well describes the man, and it's really the visual impact of Bowie himself in it that really resonates with me. I mean, as you said, he had a really great career, and I mean, I suspect a lot of people are going to go after things like The Hunger, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which I think is probably his meatiest role.
I watched that Monday night in honor. I've been meaning to watch that again. I haven't seen it, I think, in 30 years. First of all, he's just so bloody handsome in that movie. First of all, I mean, he's just radiant. I think the thing that we have to say about when talking about David Bowie is I think he is one of the few rock god musicians that made a seamless transition to film. I mean, it was almost like he was made for the medium.
Yeah. I mean, as a serious actor, too, actor, in demand by great directors. So, yes, I would completely agree.
I think because of that unearthly presence that he had. I mean, first of all, Jerry, you said it, an extraordinary looking person. But also this presence he had about him, almost as though he came from a different time, or a different place that is not our own.
Right.
Yeah. Which he started with Ziggy Stardust, the D.A. Pennebaker film. I mean, that the D.A. Pennebaker shot his final performance as that character,
right?
And that was, of course, a musical, a concert film. But then The Man Who Fell to Earth is really, you could not conjure up a more perfect leading man debut for Bowie than that film.
He really gave himself over to the art of acting as well. I have to also say here too, and then I'll move on to some of his '80s output. But for me, it's he's a complete originator, innovator of the video art form. I mean, I mean, if you ask me, what do you think of when you think of David Bowie's film output? Well, yes, Man Who Fell to Earth, but really, I think of videos like Ashes to Ashes, which I think is one of the great, most incredible video productions ever. And how he was right there on the front of the video revolution, like back in the 70s, doing things for connected to young Americans, and also I don't know if he ever did one for Fame, but I know he did one for Sorrow. That's really terrific. So, I mean, as an innovator on that front. I mean, even things like his Dancing in the Streets video with Mick Jagger and stuff like that.
That's incredible. I mean, that was at Live Aid. That was just incredible when that debuted. I mean, that was like, That's still, by today's standards, I think one of the video holds up so well. I mean,
yeah, it's campy and fun, and it's exactly what it needs to be.
There was a time a time when he kind of, because I was reading this about him, where he kind of withdrew because he was getting more and more popular on very poppy hits.
Right.
I heard an interview with him where he was talking about being in a massive stadium performing in front of tens of thousands of people, and he just thought to himself, this isn't like the kind of music I set out to be connected to.
Right.
And I think it was around that Dancing in the Streets kind of era.
You mean like Blue Jean? When we also did the song Blue Jean, which is that album from Tonight?
China Girl and Let's Dance.
He was such a chameleon, musically certainly, and bringing it back to cinema. Even his music, a lot of his best music for me, is cinematic. I was posting about his album Outside, which I think he got a bad rap for, but it was always one of his favorite albums. He had a very special place in his heart for it. That's a concept album that tells this kind of futuristic story, and it is entirely cinematic. You can close your eyes and be transported into another universe when you listen to that album from start to finish.
I agree.
I'd like to mention too the one really great movie song that he contributed to cinema, the theme to Cat People, Putting Out Fires, which was also, of course, used in Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards to great effect.
Yeah, you would never think in a World War II movie that would work.
It does. It's perfect. But I always had great. But I love the work in Absolute Beginners. I don't know if he wrote any of that, but and of course, then we have to get into what he's probably, for a certain age of people, probably most famous for is playing the Goblin King in Labyrinth, a movie that I've never really cottoned to. I think I was too old to really appreciate it in '86 when I was about 20.
But I'll tell you something. Girls our age now who were just kind of coming of age when that movie came out, Bowie is a lot of their first crushes. I've heard like a couple of female coworkers of mine have copped to that.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me one bit. In the '80s, in addition to Absolute Beginners and Labyrinth, I have to really hand it to him for a couple of really great one-scene performances. Last Temptation of Christ, of course, as Pontius Pilate. And then the next one, Basquiat in the '90s, playing Andy Warhol. I mean, imagine a guy who can play both Andy Warhol and Pontius Pilate.
Yeah, he's amazing in Basquiat. I look at somebody like Mick Jagger, who is another, without a doubt, another rock god.
Right.
And do you think Mick Jagger wanted to have the presence that David Bowie did on film?
I think so. I think that was there. I just don't think it ever. Are we using Fitzcarraldo as the starting off point? Because that didn't work out, obviously. For Jagger,
he was in Performance and in Ned Kelly.
It's like the pinnacle, I think.
But you look at those two careers, both the biggest rock stars on the planet, and they both have similar treks in terms of their cinematic output too.
Mm-hmm. They do. I think that Jagger was not able to escape being Jagger very much. Mm-hmm. I don't. Jagger's routine on stage as a rock star doesn't doesn't have any room for the kind of role play that Bowie had. So, I mean, Bowie was already primed to be an actor just by virtue of his acting on stage.
Right. True.
Literally encompassing a variety of different roles for himself.
When he was, because I've been watching a lot of interviews with him, and he says he's always asked about Ziggy Stardust. Like every interview, he was asked about it. And he said it's a bit mystifying to him because it's the only time he's ever played a character on stage. And he only did it for 18 months. And yet, that period of time has encapsulates so much of rock folklore that, of course, it's the standout in his career that people always associate with him.
And, of course, it's the standout in his music. I mean, in his musical output. It's arguably his greatest record, and I think that's the reason. I think also that character was so rich for a lot of people, as reflected in the lyrics in the album as well.
Right.
That it really sparked their imagination, and how interesting is it too that he didn't really bite to any kind of idea of expanding that character into its own cinematic world other than the.
Right.
And he didn't want to return to it. He didn't want to do any kind of album sequel or anything like that. He kind of scoffed at that idea. What do we think about him in The Prestige? Was that his last film?
No, he did a movie.
Not his last film, but I think his last film is a movie called August.
Which he's good in. I was thinking about that today. I mean, he's good in that. I think with Josh Hartnett. It's about like the .com.
Right.
It's .com, and he plays like the old world businessman who really hands it. I mean, gives the younger guys run for their money and just shows them who's boss. It's actually a very good role. The Prestige, I feel bad. The first time I watched it, I didn't recognize him at first. He's disappeared so much into the role as Tesla. I had no idea for a good chunk of the movie that was him. To be honest with you, I mean, it's a perfect part for him. Tesla, Bowie playing Tesla. That's just so cool. I mean,
it's perfect.
We're honored to welcome Candy Clark to this celebration of David Bowie. She starred opposite Mr. Bowie on the film that we love and we've discussed here tonight, The Man Who Fell to Earth, the terrific Nicholas Roeg film. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to check it out. Miss Clark has a terrific career, and she's great in The Man Who Fell to Earth, but she's also great in movies like Fat City, working with director John Huston, or American Graffiti with George Lucas. Other great films like At Close Range and Zodiac, and on and on and on. And we were so honored that she gave us her time to speak about her recollections of her time with Mr. Bowie. Here she is, Candy Clark.
Well, it was such a well-written part, and the relationships were so good. I've always been a reader, and I know good writing when I see it, and it comes along here and there, but it's not an everyday occurrence. So when I read this script, I instantly, and I can't even believe Nick said, did I want to do the part? He just gave me the script to read because I was waiting for him to do a business meeting, and I was just sitting out in the lobby, and he said, hey, read this. And when he came out, he said, what'd you think? And I said, that's really great. I love it. And he said, do you want the part? And I'm like, yeah. And that's how easy it came. Well, my first impressions of David Bowie was he was very, very nice. Nick Roeg, the director, and I went over to his place. He was staying at a rental on Doheny Drive, and Nick and I went over there to meet him to see if he was interested in doing the film. And, he answered the door. We went inside. We sat around. Nick did most of the talking. I was just there. And then David said he wanted to do the film. He was very, very nice, very welcoming,
There's something about David Bowie that feels like to the fans, it almost feels like he's from another time. What was it like to be in his presence? What kind of feeling did you get from him during the shoot?
He wasn't, he was very approachable, and we worked together one-on-one, and when we weren't doing a scene, we were running the dialogue for the next scene. I mean, it constantly likes to, and this was to accommodate me, because I learn words by repetition, and I know a lot of actors do. There's very few of us that have a photographic memory. It's a lot of angst and a lot of hard work learning speeches and monologues and dialogues, and it's not easy. If it were, everyone would do it. But he's very easy to work with, very down to earth, and he had his entourage. So at the end of the day, he would go. He had a big rental house in New Mexico and had his people there. And at the end of the day, he would go and spend time with them. It's not like we were all, out to dinner every night and hanging about. No, we would work, and then we would go our separate ways in the evening when work was done. He was a big reader. He brought a whole trunk full of books, and, he liked to, I guess, read and, have some alone time and, recharge himself. And he worked very, very hard, and he was there all the time, working. He had a huge part.
Did you ever see him in live concert?
I did. After we did the film, I got invited to see him in concert, and I think it was when he was a Thin White Duke. I can't remember. It's like so long ago. This film, The Man Who Fell to Earth, this is the 40th anniversary. So, it's the timelines and stuff like that with people's memories and my memories. I'm not real sure of dates and stuff when things happen, but definitely saw him in concert after we finished the film, and he was really good. Of course, all backstage, but I only saw him in concert.
Did you have many conversations at all with him following the film over the years? Or?
No, not really. When the film came out, it was severely edited by the distributor, and I was supposed to go on the road and promote it, and then that didn't happen. I didn't want to promote the cut version, and we just kind of went our separate ways. And he didn't live in Los Angeles very much or very long. He really didn't care for Los Angeles, and I think he pretty quickly went over to Europe, and in fact, I kind of thought he had really forgotten about The Man Who Fell to Earth. He would touch on it briefly in interviews, but not very much. And it really made me happy to see that he was basing his play in New York City on the film The Man Who Fell to Earth, the Lazarus play. So I realized that he hadn't forgot about The Man Who Fell to Earth and his times on the set. And
well, the movie has really gained momentum over the years, and it's become such a, for lack of a better term, like a cult favorite.
It has, and every time I did an interview or did a show or did anything, I would promote it, even years after the fact, because I always loved the film, even though it didn't have a fair shake at first. and it lost a lot of momentum, and maybe 4 or 5 years before it ever came out in its full version. So the benefits I could have had if it had come out intact for my career were totally lost. But that didn't mean that I didn't love it and didn't want people to know about it and possibly see it. So I always brought it up. You know, every interview, any time anyone would ask about my career, I always made sure that I, put that in the mix. One of my favorites is, so I have done my best to keep it alive, and then it always made me really happy to see that people, Criterion brought out some discs, really high-end, high quality, which promptly sold out. And, when they did that kind of gave it a stamp of approval, like, wow, maybe it is something worthwhile. And more people watch it, and more, maybe it was too ahead of its time. It'd be a shame if it's 40 years ahead of its time, but, so be it. At last, people are seeing it, and if only to go see how fantastic David Bowie is in the movie. That's what I've been telling people for years.
I can't believe, Mr. Nicholas Roeg's films are so beautifully and meticulously edited. So he spent a year editing that in the studio.
Every day, editing with Graham Clifford, his editor. And the distributor hired a guy that does editing for commercials, like 30-second commercials, 60-second commercials. And his objective was to take it from 2 hours and 23-minute movie to a plain 2-hour movie. Oh. And so as a result, they cut out 23 minutes. So can you imagine that film minus 23 minutes, here, there, and everywhere? And they also put some of the scenes in different orders, so you can see why I wouldn't want to promote and go on the road. I was supposed to go on the road for 2 weeks and sell the picture, which I was very excited to do because I'd seen it in Europe. I'd seen the film in Europe, uncut, director's cut, and I was really proud.
How long did it take for that director's cut to be made available worldwide? When was that remedied?
Well, I hate to pat myself on the back, but like I said, I'd seen the original version, so I knew what the possibility was, and I kind of tracked the the management of Cinema 5, and then when I found out the guy that owned the company was no longer there, that's when I made a call to the new management, and I spoke to the distribution department, and because Cinema 5 was a very prestigious company. If you read about them, you'll see that they owned a lot of art houses in New York City. And so when I found out the guy that had, mangled the film was no longer there, that's when I made my move. And I called the new management. I introduced myself, and I kind of lied. I said, my name is Candy Clark, and every day, I said, I get a question or 2 or 10 about the Man Who Fell to Earth. And he said, really? And I'm like, yes. There's so much curiosity about it. I said, I'll tell you what. It's not going to cost you a penny either. I said, here's what we do. Here's what, I'd like to do. And I'll promote the film. I won't charge you. I'll go on the road. I'll do whatever it takes. I said, all you have to do is you don't even have to spend the money on a new poster. You just put a banner across that says Director's Uncut Version, and, try it out. And so he said, that's a good idea. And so a couple of weeks later, I hear from him again. He said, well, the negatives all chopped up, and you know, we don't have anything to work with. And so I said, well, I can put you in touch with the people that have an uncut negative in Europe. I gave him the names. He called. Next thing I know, they had made a print. They put it out there. They were, you know, at one of their theaters, and the rest is history. And it slowly but surely gathered momentum. And then the old VHS, you know, slowly disappeared of the chopped up version of The Man Who Fell to Earth. And I think I threw away my chopped up version. And once the full version, you know, they printed up some new VHSs, and the rest is history. It got replaced slowly but surely.
Well, bless you for doing that, because that's such a gift to people that love movies. I mean, it really is. It's an astounding movie.
Well, what is really interesting is that the day I pitched, I must have been so good that the guy listened to one of the actors in the film. Of course they're going to say, yes, let's put it out again. But I really credit the man for even listening to such a harebrained idea.
Okay, that was Candy Clark. Miss Clark will make an appearance in St. Augustine, Florida, the last weekend of this month for a special screening of American Graffiti. So if you live anywhere near that area, check it out, the St. Augustine Film Festival. Thank you, Miss Clark, for giving us your time and being so generous with us in your recollections of working with Mr. Bowie. So, guys, are there any other observations you'd like to make about David Bowie's film contribution?
I do want to mention David Hemmings' movie, Just a Gigolo, from '78, which is only his second major role, and a movie I understand he didn't really care for, but he seems, you know, perfectly, like you were saying, he's got that sort of timeless quality. Well, this is a period piece set in the 20s in I think in Poland, and you know, I think that's something that, you know, I need to check out. And also Christiane F. The 80s sort of drug punk / drug movie. And, you know, like he did, you know, so many other things, you know, like great narration for a short film called The Snowman that's very popular.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Okay.
And he provided the theme song for The Falcon and the Snowman.
Did he?
This Is Not America. Yeah.
Oh wow, I forgot all about that. That's interesting. And then, you know, of course, we have to mention, you know, him, you know, flashing by in Twin Peaks, Fire Walk With Me. You know.
Yes. If anyone belonged in a David Lynch film, it was Bowie.
Yeah. And remember, in the Lost Highway soundtrack, he's on the Lost Highway soundtrack from Earthling. And
that's true.
Yeah, no, Earthling is. I wanted to mention something about. I won't lie to you. Ever since high school, I guess I've bought like every David Bowie CD. I mean, up until this last. I mean, I just always bought, and I'm so happy that you mentioned Outside, because I always think it's a very underappreciated album.
Outside
is
great.
Heathen
is great. I was listening to Heathen earlier today.
I love him so much. Such a good
and
record.
I was listening to his new album on Friday.
As for the last album, as for Black Star's last album, he just goes out with an immense glory. These videos from this last album are absolutely stunning in their honesty and in their starkness. Particularly the song, the video for the song Lazarus is particularly chilling, and it just, I mean, again, it just goes to show you that guy did not pull any punches. He he was always resolutely himself, even though he was also resolutely others. Within himself. You know what I mean?
And there's so few people that you can say this about, but people say it about a lot of, but it's said about a lot of people, and it's never really true. But it's true of David Bowie. There was truly no one like him. Like he was an absolute original.
Yeah, I mean, his loss tears a hole in the universe. It really feels like, as someone, I think it was Michael Stipe who said that it feels like the Earth is off its axis a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think he meant something to everyone, whatever part of his life or his career that someone came into. I think that's why it hurts so much, because he meant something different, I think, to everyone. I mean, there's no one. I mean, you just go on our Facebook pages or Twitter or whatever, Instagram, Tumblr. He meant something to almost everyone.
Yeah,
and that's why it hurts. It really
and it was such a shock.
Hurt.
It was such a shock when he died, because you never considered that David Bowie could die.
Exactly.
Like years ago, I read that he had, because I was wondering, where's David Bowie? Because he hadn't been around for a while until he came out with, I think, the Next Day album. And I was reading about him and heard that he had a heart attack after a performance, and I was like, David Bowie had a heart attack? Like I could not fathom that he would suffer from something as human as a heart attack.
Yeah.